Alrighty, we're two past, so I'll go ahead and get started as folks still trickle in. But welcome to the Adaptive Cloud Community Call. We're back after taking a month off, so I'm hopeful to continue the series, even with the organizational changes that we're still facing within the Microsoft realm. So if this is your first time joining the call, welcome. This call is focused on the Adaptive Cloud Community product and service updates. So topics range from AKS to Arc to Azure Local to IoT. So presenters today will go ahead and present their topics. I think we have 4 presenters today, and then we'll engage in a Q&A session at the end where we open up the floor to you all to ask any questions or topics that you want to bring up. Feel free to also drop your questions in the Q&A chat. If you don't have access to that Q&A chat at the top, it could be because you are not part of the Teams group. So if you aren't part of the Teams group, you can go ahead and head over to our Azure Adaptive Cloud Community GitHub. That's our public repository, and you should be able to go and access that now if you want, but it's basically a one-stop shop for any meeting or calendar invites, as well as the link to the Teams if you're not part of that. You can also see previous slide decks, other Adaptive Cloud resources, and any other prior recordings, which kind of leads me to our next slide here, which is our YouTube. So this call is recorded. It's a non-NDA call, and then it's publicly posted to YouTube. So if you have any friends or colleagues that were not able to make it this call, no worries. It'll be posted to YouTube, hopefully either end of day today or tomorrow, and you can go ahead and review it from there. We also have our LinkedIn group as well, if you're not already a part of that. There we try to regularly post and share updates, so feel free to also join that as well. Here is our agenda today. So we have Arc Jumpstart updates, we have app development tools for Kubernetes, Kaido, and Azure Monitor dashboards with Grafana. So I'll go ahead and kick it off with some Arc Jumpstart updates. In the past month and a half, 2 months, I guess really since we last talked in May, we've had 15 new drops. So drops has been the hot topic recently within the Jumpstart realm, especially with the build excitement. So feel free to go ahead and check those out. I tried to list all of them there, so feel free to check them out, download them, try them out. We'd love to hear your feedback. And then we also have some Lightning videos also available. We have three new releases since the month of May as well. If you're interested in the Arc ESU dashboards that Mark presented on our May Adaptive Cloud Community Call, we now have a Jumpstart Lightning episode around that, as well as a sneak peek as what's to come. Jan today is going to be talking about LocalBox, the 825H2 release, and then we also have Enable Secret Encryption on AKSEE video as well. So feel free to check those out on the Lightning series, but I'll go ahead and pass it over to Jan to talk a little bit more about some LocalBox updates.
Sure, thanks, Kenna. Let me try to take control. Perfect. Yeah, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the LocalBox updates that we had in 25H2. So we have now, as you can see, renamed HCI box to LocalBox in the previous update. So you can see in the updated architecture diagrams that the naming conventions and the architecture diagram reflects the new naming conventions on the node names and all of the branding for the product itself. We also have a lot of updates in the 25H2 release for LocalBox. So on first of all, we have brought it up to 2505 solution version. It is also staged for 2506, which is soon to be released. So that should also have close to 0-day support in LocalBox. So on the new features here on 2505 was for the upstream product, right? So that you can now, starting with this release, select a specific version of Azure Local software instead of just using the latest version. So for each upcoming release, you will be now able to choose from up to the last 6 supported versions. So it's possible to pin what solution version you want of Azure Local. On the security side of things, there is also some new features with support for the RMTM, Dynamic Root of Trust for measurement, that is enabled for all new deployments starting with 2504. So that is, of course, also included when you deploy LocalBox. On Azure Local VM updates, it's now supported with data disk expansion, so you can expand the size of a data disk attached to an Azure Local VM. This is something you can, of course, test in LocalBox as well. And also live migration of VMs that have GPU partitioning is possible. So you can read more about the news in the documentation for Azure Local itself. But for the news in LocalBox, cost optimization. So LocalBox now supports enabling Azure VM spot pricing for the client VM. So it allows users to take advantage of cost savings, right, on unused Azure capacity. So you can, of course, you need, of course, to understand that you need to tolerate interruptions because the VM can be shut down at any time if Azure should need the capacity. But based on my personal testing on this feature, it typically takes several days with the VM turned on until it's evicted. So I haven't seen it interrupt with the deployment yet. So for cost savings, that is a great option to get up to 80-90% on the compute side of the house. The other one we're also pretty excited about is the option to have separate regions for the client VM and the Azure Local instance, because our users have been sharing with us feedback around that the Azure capacity requirements for deploying LocalBox, specifically when it comes to what regions with sufficient compute capacity for the SKU that we use in the LocalBox client VM, which is standard E32 v5 or v6. So to address this friction, we have now introduced a new parameter for specifying what region you want the Azure Local Instance resources to be deployed to. So in practice, you can now deploy the client VM into any region where you have sufficient capacity for VM quotas. And by default, the Azure Local Instance region will be deployed to Australia East, but you can override this parameter and deploy to any region you prefer. I think this is a great addition to make it more easy to deploy LocalBox without any constraints on the compute side of the house. With security, also we have introduced a new enhanced security posture. So in the past, you had to create a service principal name, right, an SPN for managing Azure Local. That was due to requirements in the upstream product, but now with 2504, I believe, or maybe it was 2503 and later, it's now supported to also submit an access token, right? So we can basically get that access token from the managed identity of the client VM, and then we don't need the SPN anymore. So this follows the same pattern that we have introduced in Jumpstart ArcBox last year, and now we also fully support Azure Local deployments without an SPN. So that is also something we're very excited about. We also started with creating PowerShell modules that are published to the PowerShell gallery for Arc Jumpstart. It was introduced in ArcBox earlier this year, and now we have also created a dedicated PowerShell module for LocalBox, where we have put a lot of the commands which does a lot of the logic. So if you have a look at the deployment scripts now, they look a lot more readable. It's not so much code to scroll through. In the past, it was like 2,000 lines to scroll through, and it could be kind of intimidating if you're not familiar with the code base. But after this change, it's now much easier to follow the logic and see what's going on. And also we have other quality of life improvements. For example, we added configuration of start and shutdown settings for the nested VMs so that we're making sure that they are shut down properly and started in the correct order. If you shut down the client VM, it's less of a chance that something goes wrong when it's being turned off and on, because in the past it defaulted to saving the VMs, right? And that could lead to some issues, but this has now been fixed. So that was it for the LocalBox 25H2 update. Then I'll hand it back to you, Kiana, for presenting the next speaker.
Awesome, great. So there is a question super quick before we pass it over to Theodora in the chat that I just wanted to address because I know it's getting a little late for you, Jan. There's a question for those that don't have access to the chat. Someone said, I have a question or request. This is a great tool to spin up or to spin up or for demos, training, etc. Could we take this and attempt to make an Azure local box that runs on a physical Hyper-V server? Are there plans in place for this, or if we should start working on this, would it be something that could be shared? Just because sometimes people can't afford the high cost of this required VM, and he thinks that you may have mentioned potentially something that will help with the cost. So
Yeah, that's a great question. We actually have this on the roadmap, and I also have started testing it. So if you're keen on helping on testing this, Christopher, feel free to just ping me directly, and I can provide some information about the feature branch, so we can start testing right away.
Awesome. Thanks, Christopher, for your question, and thanks, Jan, for presenting. Teodora, we can go ahead and pass it over to you.
Thanks, Kiana. Hi, everyone. My name is Teodora, and I'm a product manager on the app development tools for Kubernetes team. And today we are announcing a new public preview release. This release is called Version Managed Extensions, which simplifies the process of building, deploying, and maintaining applications on Arc-enabled Kubernetes clusters. Version Managed Extensions refers to the bundled set that currently includes two foundational services, the Azure Container Storage enabled by Azure Arc or ACSA, and Azure Key Vault Secret Store extension for Kubernetes. In the next few months, this bundle and the foundational services that we are including is going to expand. We are going to include a certificate manager and Istio, but for now, we are ensuring that developers have the essential building blocks they will need to start their application, being storage and the secrets Arc extensions. Using the version managed extensions saves a lot of time and reduces a lot of complexity, really allowing you to just focus on writing your application code and not worry about the infrastructure. And it does this in two main ways. First, we are ensuring that all of these updates are continuously updated together rather than individually. This includes critical security fixes, any monthly updates or major version upgrades, and ensuring that all of this is continuously updated together also helps because the platform will remain up to date and secure and reliable. And we're also ensuring that all of these extensions that you may want to use are compatible with one another, and they are continuously tested to work together seamlessly. So now developers can just focus on building and deploying their application, having the confidence that their services are going to work together and that they no longer have to do any of this manually. And if you're interested in learning or reading more about this and getting the instructions, we have linked the Learn documentation here. There's going to be one command that's going to help you install either all of the extensions that you may want to use or just one or however many you would want to use. And that one command is also going to help you configure and use these services on your Kubernetes cluster. So this is available in preview to try out today. Please let us know if you have any questions or any assistance, and you can contact either me or one of my team members here. Another part of the app development tools for Kubernetes is going to include an Azure Arc Visual Studio Code extension. We are looking to build a developer experience that can actually help developers leverage the version managed extensions and also build their application from scratch. So the Azure Arc Visual Studio Code extension is currently in public preview, and I've attached a screenshot of what it looks like today. You're able to go out and just experiment with some Azure Arc commands. The current features that are available include learning more about Azure Arc, viewing your Arc connected clusters and your native Kubernetes clusters on the left-hand side. And you can also browse sample applications, any jumpstart scenarios. This can really just simplify the onboarding experience that customers may be facing if they want to just try out building a Kubernetes application from scratch. And in the next few months, we are looking to expand this feature set. We want to make this a full workplace to complete any Arc tasks. So we're going to actually include a local cluster for testing and deploying your application or developing the application with the version managed extensions installed and ready to use and run. And we're also going to add new Azure Arc tools to the Azure MCP server. This will allow users to actually leverage the Azure Arc commands through GitHub Copilot so that if you want to complete any specific tasks, you're able to have a more interactive experience and you're able to communicate with either the ask or the agent mode in GitHub Copilot for Azure Arc specific commands. And we're also going to include a more step-by-step application starter and templates in a more traditional format within the extension, asking the user which services they want to use, which language they want to use, and it will generate a template for you. So we're going to expand it to include a few more things, but we are actively looking for user feedback about what would make this a more useful extension. What is it missing and what do you actually need. So I've attached a user research form. It will take less than a minute if you're willing to just fill it out. And it's again going to help us build a very useful tool that will bring the version managed extensions and the Visual Studio Code, of course, together. Thank you so much for your time, and please reach out if you have any questions or need help. HJ, over to you.
Let me take control. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. Hey, everybody. This is HJ. I'm from the Kubernetes team. Today, I would like to talk about a feature called Kaido, Kubernetes AI Toolchain Operator Extension. As some of you already know, we made public announcement for this Kaido extension. So, we will want to, so it's currently in public preview. So I would like to take this chance to briefly introduce Kaido, what it does, and the key benefits of it. So Kaido is effectively a Kubernetes operator, right? So this is a feature developed for any application developers, AI developers who want to superpower their edge applications to make sure their applications is intelligent. So with Kaido extension, you can automate a lot of LLM deployment tasks, inferencing, and fine tunings across both cloud and edge. By cloud, I mean AKS in the cloud, and for the edge, we have Arc-enabled Kubernetes and AKS on Azure Local. So when customers try to deploy large language model or small language models at the edge, there are a lot of technical choices they have to make. Which inference runtime they use, which inference parameters they use, like how do they containerize the model weights, what model they would like to use, and which GPUs they may need, and how does the model fit into GPUs. There are a lot of deployment kind of issues. So we collaborate with AKS team to create this Kaido experience to make sure our customer can easily enable large language models or small language models, such as open source file models, Mistral, and Q1, right? And we also did a lot of work to validate the models with the GPUs that we support. For example, A2, A16, and T4. These are the models we support today with Azure Local. And I'd like to mention another key benefit of Kaido is that it's built on top of a famous CNCF project. It's also Kaido, and it provides consistent experience across the cloud, AKS in the cloud, AKS at the edge, and any Kubernetes, because this is open source. Because it's open source, this is also no vendor lock-in, right? You can try it and use it in any Kubernetes flavor. So in addition to using the models that we supported, we call curated models, you can also leverage the Hugging Face models, right? You can even you can even deploy the private models with the private weights. Obviously, we do a lot of integrations. We would like to, customer can use the Kaido with managed Prometheus to influence, to run inferencing and observe the inference runtime. You can also leverage a Visual Studio Code, AI Toolkit extension for model evaluations. So as you can see here, we attached a few links here, so you can check out the Kaido extensions. There's also a Jumpstart job that you can use to experiment to evaluate the product in AKS in case you don't have any on-prem GPUs. we would like to get some feedback about how you plan to use Kaido to enable local LLMs for your Kubernetes environment. Specifically, we would like to understand, number one, what kind of Kubernetes you are trying to deploy to, what kind of GPU you are trying to leverage, and what kind of models you are looking for. We would like to get your feedback. Please contact me or Kiana or any person from our team if there's any questions. Okay, this is architecture diagram for the Kaido. There's a lot of information here, but I would like to quickly walk through the experience of Kaido extension. As you can see here, the first step is to enable Kaido extension. You can easily do that with the existing AVCR command. Today, we only have VCR experience. In the future, we're looking to add portal experience, so you don't need to run any commands. You can just do everything easily from the portal. Once the Kaido extension is enabled in your clusters, you need to provision the GPU node. So in the future, we do also want to improve the experience. So provision GPU will not be needed in the future releases. And once you have the GPU in place, then you can deploy the model, use a very simple YAML file. And then this YAML file will pull the models from the public MCRs or any container registry you specified based on the configuration. And then the model will be deployed to your Kubernetes clusters. It's very simple. So I would like to open the floor and see if any feedback or questions.
Yes. Does it support NVLink? And is there a scheduler built in?
No, we leverage the default Kubernetes scheduler. So the inference pod placement is going through the default Kubernetes scheduler today. We do look into the more optimization for that. If you have any specific questions, please post in the chat or let me know if there's any question. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. I will hand it back over to Kiana.
Awesome. Great. Thanks, HJ. I'll go ahead and pass it actually over to Coyote to talk a little bit more about Azure Monitor dashboards with Grafana, which is also something that was covered as part of build.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining the call. I'm Coyote, PM on the Azure Monitor team. And today we'll be covering Grafana dashboards and the integration that we've introduced at build. So before we get into the specific capabilities that we announced, let's talk about what Grafana is for anyone who's not familiar. Grafana is a really popular visualization and dashboarding solution that's used in the open source community. It supports a wide range of data sources, some of the most common open source ones like Prometheus, Zipkin, Jaeger, Loki, Tempo, but it also supports Azure Monitor data sources like Azure Monitor metrics, logs, and traces, as well as Azure Data Explorer as an example. Grafana also has data sources for third-party tools like App Dynamics and New Relic. So regardless of your observability stack that you're running to monitor your clusters and apps, there's usually a data source plugin available in Grafana. And then Grafana has great client-side visualizations and dashboarding capabilities to help you get rich views into that data and assist with how quickly you can do things like monitoring and troubleshooting. One of the challenges, however, with Grafana is that it takes some overhead. You need to either deploy it yourself on cluster or stand it up on an Azure app service or your own compute if you're self-hosting, or you'd pay for this with Azure Managed Grafana or third-party managed Grafana like Grafana Cloud. And what we're doing is bringing all the capabilities of Grafana to the Azure portal with none of the overhead. So with that, I will go ahead and introduce Azure Monitor dashboards with Grafana. This allows you to create, edit, import Grafana dashboards directly within the Azure portal with no additional cost. The Azure Monitor cost still applies. So if you ingest things like metrics or logs into Azure Monitor, costs still apply there, but the visualizations and dashboards themselves don't have any additional costs. It also has less admin overhead than if you self-host or use a managed Grafana solution. These are baked into the Azure portal, and each dashboard is an Azure resource, so there's no concept of maintaining a Grafana server, for example, or deploying Grafana to your own compute. All of the compute is transparent to the end user. The back end is transparent to the end user. You just get all the benefits of the Grafana dashboards within the Azure portal. Because these dashboards are Azure resources themselves, all of the things that you typically do for role assignment and assigning dashboard read or write permissions can be applied using Azure. And the same way you'd place resources into a resource group or subscription or manage them with ARM and Bicep, like all of that applies to these dashboards as well. And we have a number of pre-built out-of-the-box dashboards for our hero scenario, which is AKS, but also there are dozens of other dashboards for Azure Monitor and other Azure resources that are included. So a quick look at how this works overall. I'll start with the middle of the screen here. Those are our data sources. So the data sources supported for Grafana dashboards in Azure Portal are Azure Prometheus, and then Azure Monitor, metrics, logs, application insights, traces, as well as Azure Resource Graph. And all of the RBAC is managed by Entra ID, so standard Azure RBAC. And then there are three flavors of dashboards at the top. The dashboards that we ship out of the box, we call these template dashboards or out-of-the-box dashboards. Grafana community dashboards, because these dashboards are fully compatible with Grafana and follow the same Grafana JSON schema. You can import Grafana community dashboards for Prometheus and Azure Monitor, and they'll work as expected. And then you can also create or build your own dashboards, user-created dashboards. We've built in entry points into the AKS experience in Portal to get to these dashboards quickly. And if you're not using AKS, you're using Arc, for example, you can get to these dashboards using the Azure Monitor entry point. So I have two quick columns here. I'll talk about what's available today as part of our public preview. And this is the core experience of our out-of-the-box dashboards, all of the CRUD experiences for creating and editing dashboards, the ability to view these dashboards in the AKS cluster context, and then import and export dashboards. The data sources that are supported today are Azure Monitor. This includes all of Azure Monitor. So this is Azure Monitor Platform Metrics, Azure Monitor Custom Metrics, Azure Monitor Logs. This includes Azure Resource Graph, Application Insights Traces. All that's covered by Azure Monitor, and then Azure Managed Prometheus as well for any of your Prometheus metrics. And we're available in 6 regions, but that's going to expand as we go towards GA. At GA, we plan to introduce Grafana Explorer so you can run ad hoc queries. You can access dashboards and other resources. In addition to AKS, we'll probably be expanding to more resources, and then we'll be adding support for new data sources like Azure Data Explorer and SQL. Additionally, all of the enterprise promises that Azure has for localization, language support, and accessibility will be available at GA. And my last slide is a quick look at what the difference is between the new offering, Dashboards with Grafana on the left, and the existing or previous offering called Azure Managed Grafana. The key limitation here is the data sources that are supported. Only Azure Monitor and Azure Prom are supported in the portal version, and you have access to all of the OSS and third-party data sources in Azure Managed Grafana. The dashboards on the left are included by default in the portal and don't have any additional cost, whereas in Azure Managed Grafana, it's a separate entry point in UI. So you have your own Grafana web UI outside of portal, and there's per user pricing available. And with that, I think we can fit in a quick demo of the dashboards in the portal. So I'll go ahead and share my screen now and walk you through the AKS entry point as well as the Azure Monitor entry point. So I'll start by going to a standard AKS cluster. If I scroll down on the left here in the table of contents, we'll see an entry here for dashboards with Grafana preview. Once you click on this, this brings up a list of our out-of-the-box dashboards here, where each row represents a dashboard. So we can take a look at our basic compute dashboard for things like CPU, memory, network utilization on the cluster. Automatically, the correct Azure Prometheus data source is loaded, given the cluster context as well as the cluster name. So here are some of our panels in the dashboard for CPU use, memory use, network use, and so on. And while this is a really good dashboard to start, you might want to edit or make changes to the out-of-the-box dashboard. And this is where full Grafana capabilities are available. So you can do things like modify the legend value. So instead of showing only the last value, maybe I also want to show the max CPU value in the legend. Maybe I want to change my time range to something in the last 15 minutes. And maybe I want to change the look and feel of the chart to use a bar chart here instead. And we're going to go ahead and also stack these values one on top of the other so that I can get some of the CPU usage across the cluster. So all of the Grafana edit capabilities that you have in open source Grafana for visualizations, client-side transforms, client-side processing, the ability to edit and modify queries are all available here. And then we can save this version of the dashboard as a new Azure resource. The last thing I'll show is outside of AKS, if you want to get to these dashboards, it's still possible. This is an AKS specific dashboard, so it's only relevant in this context. But for other Azure resources, you can get to dashboards from the Azure Monitor entry point, Azure Monitor. And this list of dashboards is not curated for AKS, but it's open-ended where we have dozens of dashboards for other Azure resources, including things like application insights, storage accounts, networks, key vaults, and so on. And as you start opening any of these dashboards, you can select the subscription, resource group, and resource that's interesting to you. And you have the same edit capabilities that we saw before with the ability to modify the query that's actually populating the data frame, as well as the visualization. So I'll show one more dashboard demo using application insights, where the first thing I'll do is point to the App Insights resource that's important. So let's go ahead and see if I can find one of these. Let's go to Contoso and Applicant and Retail. Okay, so here's my starting Application Insights dashboard. And this is a great out-of-the-box dashboard with everything from the number of users and sessions, the number of failures, my server response time, the number of page views, and so on. But we want to customize this dashboard to be more useful for our use case. So instead of showing just server response time, maybe I want to modify the query here. So this is an Azure Monitor metrics query. Currently, I'm doing server response time here. But we can modify that to do more than that. So I'll go ahead and duplicate this query. Right now I have query A, but now I have query A and B. And instead of just server response time, I'll also pull up the server request. So this would be our server request count. And we can put these on the same chart. And now we get the relationship between the number of requests and the server response time. So we've made one modification to this chart, and we'll make a second modification to failures here. Right now, I'm looking at all of my failures, but maybe I'm only interested in a subset of server-side failures like my 500 requests. So we'll add a filter here for result code, filter this down to 500s only, modify my title, and we get a new view of the panel with only the 500 result code left. And those are the two modifications I'll make to this dashboard before I save it. So we have lots of great benefits of Grafana brought into the Azure portal in the context of AKS, as well as other resources. And we also have the ability to import dashboards from the public Grafana gallery. So we can browse the Grafana gallery, pick up any of the dashboards that we're interested in, and we can then import that dashboard into our portal flow by saving it as a new imported dashboard, picking the resource we want to associate it with for our prom data source. Okay, so that was our public Grafana dashboard for Node Exporter Full. It works on the Prometheus data source with a number of gauges at the top and some time series charts for CPU and memory. And then once we imported that dashboard, you get all the benefits of that dashboard directly within the Azure portal here with the same CPU gauges at the top, all of the rows that we saw in the screenshot of the dashboard. And then all of these panels are completely editable, just like I showed before, where you can modify the query and the visualizations. So I will take a pause here to see if there are any questions or comments from the room before I hand things over to Kiana.
There actually seems to be two questions, or one question, I guess, in the chat. The first question came from John. He was asking, it seems that dashboards with Grafana for virtual machines does not include Azure Arc-enabled servers. Is it possible to create a custom dashboard that includes Azure Arc-enabled servers?
Yes, it is possible to include a custom dashboard that does, but although that's true, I think today the key factor in determining whether or not dashboards with Grafana works for your scenario is whether you get the data into an Azure data store. So if your virtual machines are storing their data in Azure Monitor Platform Metrics or Azure Monitor Logs, then yes, dashboards can be created on that data. But if you're not collecting data into any of the Azure data stores, then the answer is no, right? The first step is getting the data into the right supported data stores. Any other questions or comments?
There was one other comment that was agreeing with John's post, but he's also said that there's a lot of great dashboards, but he has not found one that all the virtual machine resources shows all the virtual machine resources in one, and it would be nice to see that in a view that shows Azure Arc resources and Azure resources.
Yep, happy to take feedback on this if you want to share what you'd like to see in that dashboard, or even partner with us in building a new dashboard that we can share with the rest of the community. Feel free to reach out directly.
Laurent, bonjour. Comment vas-tu?
Okay, Ken, I'll pass the presentation back to you.
Ouais.
Awesome. Thank you. Let me go ahead and start presenting the slide deck again. Let it load. All right. Scroll to the end here. But that's all we have in terms of topics today. I know most people have come off mute and had their questions as we've been going along. But if you've thought for any of the presenters that are still on the call, in the meantime, feel free to come off mute. Just wanted to say before we get into the Q&A, our next call will be on the 6th of August. So the first Wednesday again of each month. Hoping to come back with some new topics. But if you, of course, have any, feel free to post any in the chat that you want to hear about. But without further ado, does anyone have any other questions? This is everyone's favorite moment where everyone comes off mute, but it's okay if you don't have any questions. As always, if you could think of any in the future, feel free to post in this chat or in the Adaptive Cloud community Teams chat as well, and someone will be sure to take a look and get answers to your question. So if no questions, I'll go going once, going twice. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for attending today. I'm happy to be back in the Adaptive Cloud community call. Like I said, we'll be back in August. Feel free to check out our GitHub, of course, for all of the resources. This slide deck will be posted there, as well as this recording being posted to our YouTube. And if you have any feedback or if you have any topics that you would like to see covered in our future calls, feel free to go ahead and submit that form. But thank you for attending today, and we'll see you back in a month. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.